All right, today we're going to unpack a huge, and I mean huge paradox. It's all about the millennial generation. How on earth did a group raised on so much hope end up feeling so completely stuck? We're going to piece together the psychological story behind why so many people are just burned out. And it all starts with a feeling that I bet is going to sound pretty familiar. Yeah, this quote, it just nails it, right? It perfectly captures that central mystery. It's this weird cocktail of feeling like you've done everything you were supposed to do, but at the same time, feeling like you've totally failed to launch. And look, this isn't just a vibe. Research has actually documented this massive gap between what was expected and what reality turned out to be. So that feeling, that nagging discomfort, what do we even call that? Well, there's a name for it, cognitive dissonance. It's like mental static. It's what happens when two totally contradictory ideas are bouncing around in your head. Like the idea that you're special and you can do anything, crashing into the reality of, wow, this is a constant struggle. Your brain just can't square it, and that creates some serious psychological tension. Okay, so to really get how we got here, we've got to look at these two conflicting worlds that basically shape this entire generation. First up, let's talk about the promise. The world millennials were told was waiting for them. I mean, think back to the 80s and 90s. This was the parenting playbook. The whole self-esteem movement was in full swing. And look, it was all incredibly well-intentioned, right? Parents just wanted to raise confident, successful kids. So the message was clear. It was constant. You are special and your potential is absolutely limitless. A whole worldview was built right on top of that foundation. But then, just as millennials were hitting their most formative years, that whole worldview just smashed head-on into a perfect storm. It's like a 1-2 punch. First, boom, social media explodes. And suddenly your entire life is a performance where your self-worth is literally tallied in likes. And then bam, the 2008 financial crisis hits, and the entire economic rug is just yanked out from underneath the job market. And the result of that collision, well, it's this really unique state of being for millions of people. Folks now in their 30s and 40s. A life that just feels permanently on standby. I mean, the desire for those classic milestones like buying a house or starting a family, that hasn't gone away. But the ladder to actually get there, it feels like somebody just pulled it up. It leaves you with this long, drawn-out feeling of just waiting for real life to finally kick in. So, what does living like that, in this state of constant, humming, low-level stress, actually do to you? Well, it turns out this isn't just a mental challenge. It takes a real, physical toll on your body. Now, what's really fascinating here is that there is a clinical term for that feeling of burnout. It's called allostatic load. Think of it as the literal wear and tear on your body. It comes from being in this perpetual state of high alert, always bracing for a stable life that seems like it's just around the corner, but it never actually shows up. I know, allostatic load. Sounds pretty academic, right? But what does it actually look like in the real world? This feeling has incredibly concrete consequences, especially when we start talking about one of our most basic human needs, shelter. Just look at this number, 84%. A study on the Irish housing crisis found that a staggering 84% of renters feel insecure about their housing situation. That's not a minority. That is a near universal feeling of instability for an entire generation of people who rent. And this quote, wow. It perfectly illustrates what that statistic actually feels like. This is from someone in that same study, and it's the perfect definition of allostatic load in action. You're not building a life, you're just scrambling to survive the next 30 days. Imagine living that way, year after year. It is an incredibly stressful way to exist. You see, this feeling of constant scrambling, it's not just about financial stress. It's a symptom of something way bigger, a fundamental breakdown of the rules we were all taught to live by. It feels like the entire social contract has been ripped up. And when the rulebook you grew up with gets broken on such a massive scale, it triggers something called schema disruption. It's this profound psychological shock that forces your brain to basically rewire its most basic assumptions about how the world is supposed to function. And this right here illustrates the absolute heart of the matter, the massive gap between the promise and the reality. The social contract was supposed to be a simple, straight line. You study hard, you get a good job, you build a stable life. But the reality millennials found was crushing debt, so-called entry-level jobs that somehow required 5 years of experience, and a gig economy with absolutely zero stability. But here's the thing about humans. We don't just break, we adapt. So in this final section, let's look at how so many of the behaviors millennials get criticized for are actually logical, completely rational adaptations to a system that just changed all the rules on them. Let's take job hopping, for example. It gets such a bad rap, doesn't it? It's always framed as a character flaw, a lack of loyalty or commitment. But is it? Or is it a perfectly rational response to an economy where companies got rid of pensions and job security first? Let's be honest, millennials didn't invent corporate disloyalty. They just adapted to it. And you know what's wild? Out of all this chaos, a really powerful and unique skill set has emerged. We're talking about the most educated generation in history. They're digital natives, they're incredible critical thinkers, and, this is a big one, they've started to destigmatize the entire conversation around mental health. In short, they developed the exact skills they needed to navigate the world they were given. And that right there is maybe the biggest paradox of all. You've got a generation with the language and the self-awareness to talk about mental health more openly than any generation before them, precisely because they are navigating conditions, from economic instability to climate anxiety, that are just objectively more stressful. So as we wrap all this up, the ultimate takeaway is this. When we ask why this generation seems so anxious or why they haven't bought a house yet, maybe we're asking the wrong question. This isn't a story about a generation's character flaws. No, it's a story about a predictable, totally human response to a massive societal shift. It's what happens when you're handed a map for life that no longer matches the territory you actually have to walk through. They aren't broken, they are adapting. And that leaves us with a huge question, not just for millennials, but really for everyone. If the old rules and the old map are gone for good, what does the new one look like? And who gets to draw it?